Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Shalom, good day. Goedemiddag, good people. I'm just stopping temporarily because I wanted to holler at you guys. I'm on the way. I'm on the road, rather, from Durban back to Gauteng, namely Pretoria. I'm going to be in Pretoria for a few days, perhaps until Sunday. That's not why I'm doing this vlog. I'm doing this vlog because periodically, as I've been stopping at just basically every 2 hours, which is my rule for just stretching the legs and the like, I've been keeping an eye on social media, and I've been watching what's been happening with the hashtag national shutdown by the student activist grifters out trying to build their profile, trying to secure that parliament bag using students, unfortunately. And that's exactly what my assessment of this entire thing is. That is exactly what my assessment of this entire thing is. There are students right now who have very serious issues that they're dealing with. I'm not discounting that. And, given how trash the economy has been and has become because of the politicians' lockdowns, of course, students would be another interest group in the country who are seeking state help, further state help, in order to pay their bills. Everybody else has been doing it. Everybody else has been doing it, right? Everybody else has been holding out the begging bowl to the very same politicians who actually destroyed the economy, who made life more expensive. So that as you watch this video, please don't fool yourself. I'm not blaming the students. The students are not to blame here. The students are playing by a society's rules that are statist. In other words, that are geared and orientated towards the state, government, being the be-all, end-all. And that decisions, key economic decisions, that speak to your survival or whether you fold, are put into the hands of politicians. So they're playing by those rules. So I'm not going to fault them. Who I am going to fault, and you've heard me speak on this before, but now it's become crystal clear, and I almost called it. I called it as a prediction, is that you will have a situation where those who are at the front of these so-called organic protests will be the usuals, the student, the party political student activist grifters. And I call them grifters. I call them grifters because they are literally using the plight of students and the grievances of students. And again, I shouldn't even say use, they're abusing the plight of students and the legitimate grievances of students in order to get their own way. And in doing so, they are saying and telling students what they want to hear as opposed to the truth. So the only reason they are gaining support, minimal as it may be so far, because it's been very small crowds, you'll notice in this round of hashtag fees must fall. But they are spinning a web of lies and deceit, a statist web of lies and deceit, telling students exactly what they want to hear, even though they know it is a lie. The notion of free education is a complete lie. It is a complete lie. But for the purposes of the grift, which is you telling people what they want to hear for your own benefit, they will keep the grift going. And out of it, you'll see the development of these organic student leaders, like you did in the first round of Fees Must Fall all those years back. And where are those student leaders now? Well, they're all in parliament, or most of them, excuse me. Excuse me, let me be factual. A lot of them are in parliament. They got what they wanted. Of course, they won't say that that's what they wanted. They won't say that, hey, actually, we were doing this for clout, to build our own political profiles off of the backs of students. They won't say that. They're not stupid. But that's exactly what happened. Because after all of the violence, after all of the property destruction, after the deaths of various people, after round one of Fees Must Fall, did they actually get what they wanted? Is education in South Africa, higher education in particular, free? No, of course not. Of course not. And who were those students? They were the same students that are doing what they're doing now, which is primarily the party political students, student activists, I'm sorry. The very same ones who belong to SASCO and the ANC Youth League, both of which are affiliated to the ANC, which is currently in government, which is the EFF Student Command, which is, of course, affiliated to the economic freedom fighters, the red in tooth and claw commies that they are. I don't know if the DA student organization is involved in this round of things. I haven't seen them be vocal or at the front of the queue. I haven't seen much in the way of blue t-shirts in these mobs, these crowds that are embarking on a national shutdown. I haven't seen that. So I'll be fair to them. But I know the DA. The DA are like any other political movement. They too will probably want their pound of flesh on this issue. So maybe in one way or the other, they may get involved. I don't know. I don't know. But the point I'm trying to get at, here is that there is the appearance of this being an organic student-led uprising, if I can call it that, because that's the language we're meant to believe that this is. Oh, excuse me, hiccups. as I said, hiccups, like a stream of spit came flying out. And let me get into this. Let me take a quick bookmark and get into why I say we are going to be led to believe. Because there is a somebody behind that. There is a somebody responsible for dribbling and distracting, for pushing out a narrative that backs these students, even though the demands the students are making, or let me be specific, even though the narrative the students are trying to push out is false, and it's based on a false premise that we can achieve free education in inverted commas without any sacrifices elsewhere, which is the argument they'll never say. I mean, they'll call for free education, but when you then say, okay, cool, let's perhaps look at giving you this free education, who takes a scalpel? Who do we cut in order to fund your free education? Should we chop significant portions of the already bloated public service? Oh no, they'll say. How can we ever say that as leftist student organizations? The state is meant to be one of the biggest employers. They'll tell you, because of their ideology. Okay, so who do we cut from? Should we cut from the healthcare services? Whether you believe the state should be running healthcare services or not is not the argument I'm making here. I'm just framing my discussion in the statist terms that they use. Statist terms that they use as socialists, as communists, and as state-centric people. So should we cut from the hospital bill or the healthcare budget, or the education budget? Oh no, they'll say. Of course you can't do that. What about the poor? Well, that's a trade-off. There's a trade-off that has to be made. And what do they come back to say? Well, actually what we should be cutting from is all the corruption in government. Oh, okay. The best way we can do that is to vote out the ANC. Oh no, they'll say. Especially the ANC Youth League and SASCO. Oh no, they'll say. We can't do that. The ANC represents the aspirations and the will of the people. Okay, so what then? And how are you not fake? How are you not fake? When I call you out and we have a discussion on what needs to happen, if we assume that free education is possible, when I then tell you what it will cost, and you say no to any of these costs, how should I not call you out as being fake? And that you recognize you are fighting a Pyrrhic war, if I can call it a Pyrrhic war, because I don't know if they win, but there's definitely a great cost to the students. Why shouldn't I call you out as being disingenuous student activist grifters who are just using these students to advance your own political careers? The very same political careers that will land you a comfy job as being a political insider and an economic insider in the very same ANC and EFF who are in the echelons of power in different contexts. Because the EFF is in power, so to speak, insofar as it has representation in parliament. Sizable representation too, in the grand scheme of things. So that's how they benefit. That's where the EFF Student Command grift keeps an eye on, a nice plush seat on parliament. And of course, for SASCO and the ANC Youth League, they benefit insofar as they too have a wider range of things they can do, from becoming parliamentarians, being deployed into government, or even just becoming politicians in government. Hey guys, we're being dribbled here. We're being dribbled and distracted by a bunch of students who really, they know what they're doing. They're not stupid. They know that they can tap into the emotive nature of the plight of students in this country. They know they can do that. But they don't do it for the benefit of students. They do it for the benefit of themselves and their student activist grift. So that the economics and the math and the numbers, the finance just doesn't work. It in of itself is an absolute lie. Free education is simply not possible. It's not possible unless you make major concessions. And as I've been calling for, you cut the size of the state. If you're going to do this, then chop the size of the state to a point where there is less money going to economic insiders and divert more money to students. If you're going to do it, divert it to the students. And by the way, I'm not saying I support this, because that in and of itself, doing something like that, introduces other unintended consequences, what we call negative externalities in economics, because they would harm a third party that would not be subject to that arrangement, that finance arrangement between the state and the students who are now being given a free education. A third party would be harmed. Who is the third party? Actually, let me not get into that. I'm going to save that economic lesson for later. But the point being, there would be unintended consequences. And let me just maybe give you one from an economic perspective. The one economic unintended consequence would be that actual tuition and college fees would become exorbitantly expensive. Exorbitantly expensive. Even for that same government. Free education doesn't mean it's cheap or it becomes cheaper. It doesn't. On the contrary, it'll become more expensive. And why, you're asking? Because if you think about it, if you open up the checkbook and you effectively say it's guaranteed by the taxpayer, what the hell do you think the universities will be doing? They're going to hike their prices. They're going to charge for things that are irrelevant to the core function of education, but they know they'll be able to. I would do it. You would do it if you think about it. If you think about it, a customer who walks into your store and let's say for argument's sake, this customer was bragging. You're the shopkeeper and you're hearing them. The customer's bragging, oh, I've got an open checkbook. Everybody who is in my squad, let's say there's quite a few of them who walked in. Everybody's in my squad, have an open checkbook. We can afford anything. Trust you me, if you could, you would hike your prices to take advantage of that. Because the cost of the education is not borne by the individual using it. It's borne by a third party, the taxpayer. So what you inevitably have is poorer South Africans subsidizing and paying for the education of mostly middle-class and richer South Africans. A large proportion of middle-class individuals and even rich individuals are the ones who you'll find at universities. And if you're saying free education for everybody, then you're effectively saying poorer South Africans subsidize a 3 or 4 year college tuition for richer South Africans. And this is not to say all students are rich. Please don't misunderstand that. But the point is, this leftist approach to dealing with an issue of students who struggle to afford an education is absolutely inappropriate. Absolutely inappropriate. And that it has unintended consequences. Hashtag negative externalities. The very same students who actually have real grievances. That's why I said at the very beginning of this is not an attack on the students, especially poor students. This is not an attack on them. There are very real grievances, especially for those who come from poor families and they've absolutely been devastated by the very same politicians who they're trying to beg for more money from. Beg more money from by putting at the front the very same students who belong to those political parties. That's the delicious irony of all of this. It is the students who are getting the raw deal here. Wake up. It is the ordinary students who are getting the raw deal here. And what happened in the last Fees Must Fall, in terms of them coming last and everybody else winning, politicians winning, the political activists who led these things winning, the students came last. Because how else do you explain the phenomena of the same students who have struggled then coming forward and saying we're struggling again? And the one thing those students are doing as a flop is believing that the same student political activists have their back now when they didn't back then. They were sold out by those damn student activist grifters. Because when the real consequences are needed, in other words, when the real consequences are needed in order to deal with the material conditions of students, i.e. voting out this current crop of leftist, filthy communists who are in power, no, the student activists will say, we can't go that far. Oh no, they'll say. We must maintain the AFF. We must maintain the ANC. Oh, really? Then what's the whole point of this? Will it just be a continuous merry-go-round where they'll get a few concessions this time, often at the expense of other people? Because that's what happened last time. The students got a few concessions. They didn't get the free education. They got a few concessions. And it was other programs of government, often the welfare-related ones, that took a shave in order to fund the last victory that the students got. I put it to you that the same thing will happen now. Someone else will pay the price for the hollow victory that will then be claimed by the student activist grifters, who then use that hollow victory in order to say, give me my seat in parliament. You see, I can lead people. You're being dribbled, people. You're being dribbled. And it's always the actual poor students who get the short end of the stick. But where I wanted to go as the final point is the role of the media in all of this. Because after round one of Fees Must Fall, a few years ago, the media, guys, arguably the South African mainstream media created this monster, arguably, by giving it wall-to-wall coverage, which was vaguely critical in its analysis. And to go one step further, not only was it not critical in its analysis, and at times made an effort to conceal the reality, a thuggish reality, or if not conceal it, contextualize it, with their army of woke, trendy, lefty political pundits. That same media sold you the profiles of these student activist grifters and claimed they were leaders and they're the next generation. Some of them were even splashed on the front of magazines, lauded as heroes. Even as these protests and these riots were leaving a bloody trail of death, destruction, and violence. Oh no, we were told by the media, these are heroes. They're the next generation. And their profiles were sold to you in that same language. That same media is now being consumed by the monster it created or helped create. There are videos circulating online of journalists being pushed around, assaulted, prevented from doing their job by the very same students who, even in this round, they were beginning to cock the language of these are the new generation of heroes fighting for the disenfranchised students. People are not learning the lessons, and it's costing them, especially the journalists. It's costing them. That actually there is a need, a desperate need, to separate the student activist grifters from the ordinary students who are fighting for, perhaps rightly, for a little bit of breathing room financially. I don't mind that. I really don't mind that. And that there is a need, therefore, to have a conversation of how do we actually make it easier for students in this country, especially students who are deserving, to access grants, maybe access loans. How do we bring in the private sector? How do we marshal a great deal of philanthropy from ordinary people to voluntarily put students through the system? Because by God, this country definitely needs the skills. And we can have a debate a little later. It's not much of a debate. My own position is that actually I'd rather see more people go through vocational skills than higher education institutions, because those are the skills that are in real terms are actually needed. Plumbers, electricians, boilermakers, you name it. How about we set up a bursary for those people? Get them into the system, because the economy is more desperate for them than for someone who did feminist dance theory in a liberal arts degree. Because that's the other unintended consequence by making education free. No one says that the vast majority of people will be heading into the very sort of degrees that are required, needed by the economy, the STEM type qualifications, science, technology, engineering, and math. No one says those people will be going there. Trust you me, you'll get an explosion of people going into the more useless qualifications. And I say this, by the way, so you don't think I'm just saying it in J. I say this as someone who myself, looking back, I went and got a useless degree in the grand scheme of things of what I'm doing now with my life. I graduated with an industrial psychology and an industrial sociology degree. Fat load of good that's doing me right now. Yo! And you get a lot more people doing these because you've essentially removed the incentive that markets often provide of demand and supply. What is the demand and what supply? You'd remove that completely. Universities will say, cool. If ordinarily we have 300 classes of 300, I know it's more, on average, for these sort of degrees that are useless, well, how about we have 3,000? Let's multiply it by 10, because it's all free. The taxpayer is paying for it. To hell with what the market needs. Yeah. Anyway, food for thought. Food for thought. So let me summate. The one thing that we're seeing here is that this current crop of fees must fall under the hashtag national shutdown seems very forced and very contrived. Very forced and very contrived. Which is why you can almost see that they're fishing They're trawling for controversy, which includes the spectre that we're seeing now of beating up journalists, and it's all trawling for attention. Maybe because the numbers aren't as big as they were at this time. Maybe there's some fatigue or mistrust from actual students. I don't know. But there's clearly an attempt to troll for more attention, for more controversy in this one. And in the crosshairs are some of the people that actually made these students, or at least gave them this platform that allowed the grifter type student activists to build profiles, i.e. the media. They're going after them, beating some of them up, pushing them around, saying you're not welcome here, etc., etc. The media is being bitten by the tiger that they left out of the cage. They let out of the cage, or helped let out of the cage. And in all of this, no one is actually, no one is actually crunching the numbers in real terms. Look at the reality of this. Except you have two sides, each building unrealistic expectations. And who are the winners at the end when the dust settles? It is the political grifters, the ones who wear the party political t-shirts, who want to lead you only as far as them getting their way, but never as far as actually getting rid of the impediment to having more students get access to opportunity. Oh no, they'll never take it that far. That's an inconvenient conclusion place. You're being dribbled. So I hope that some of the mainstream mainstream media chums are paying attention and seeing what happens when you side with violent lefties. Because even though you share an ideological impulse with them, as many journalists do, tough for them to hide it. I mean, one of them even took offense to my tweet and lashed out in a predictable lefty way. What's his name? Wesley Fester. Lashed out in a tweet to me when I pointed this out, that this whole national shutdown and this current crop of fees must fall looks forced and contrived and is desperate for media attention. Oh, well, of course you would say that. You represent white interests, blah, blah, blah. That comes from a journalist. And if you scroll through his timeline, that same asswipe of a journalist expresses support for what he sees in front of him. When it comes to him and his profession, oh no, he'll say, it's wrong that you're assaulting journalists, but I support the students for what they're doing and their cause. So he's ideologically in sync with these students. To hell with everybody else who is assaulted, who's affected by this. It only mattered when it came to him and his profession. To hell with everybody else. Tell me again how the mainstream media are fair and objective. The closet lefties, man, claiming to be impartial media. Again, not all of them, please. Don't be that kind of person. So you're saying all media, blah, 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 blah. No. I'm not saying all media or anything. I'm saying there is a big number of them who were themselves indoctrinated in this crap from the very same universities that produced them. So of course they're going to now support them, support the students ideologically when they are now journalists working in these newsrooms. They're smart enough not to say openly admit their bias, but they'll promote this trash. And ironically, in promoting it, that same monster is turning around and biting them. So let me end it there. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think, guys. Really appreciate your views. Remember, hit that like button, share this with your friends, get them involved in the conversation. As soon as I get to Pretoria, I'll go through some of the comments. Really appreciate you guys watching. And yeah, on my way to Joburg, nearly there. Don't be dribbled by what you're seeing here. Use your mind. Analyze what is happening in front of you. Don't be dribbled. And least of all, never trust a commie.